If you're not keeping track of my playthrough of Genshin Impact, which, why aren't you? You know that I finally crossed over to Inazuma. I had this reaction. So I want to honor Inazuma by listening to Sakura and Violet Thunder Disc 1, Song 1, Inazuma. Let's listen to it. This melody is so gorgeous. There's obviously, it's a land of suffering and pain. Of course, comments have told me how the difficulty spike really ramps up here in Inazuma. Not exactly a pleasant and hospitable place, quite the contrary. And interestingly, in this music that introduces Inazuma, there is that quality in it. The thing is, a melody like this, what is that doing? It's cascading down. And there's a piangendo, which in Italian that means tearful or crying, lilt that descends down. And of course, underneath that main flute, pan flute melody, and I also love this traditional instrumentation, of course, which we've come to know and understand that of HOYO-MiX and MiHoYo and Yu-Peng Chen. There is this somber quality. It's very sober. It's very pensive. And there is a degree of beautiful elegance in this. Right? Like that carries us, and it's like a waterfall cascading down, like a stream, like a brook. And the way that the music lilts, there is this feeling of this edge of sadness to it that comes across to me. Yeah, in some ways to me, actually, the koto drums, I believe they're koto drums. This is a musical language that I don't necessarily have access to mentally, so I don't necessarily know all the instruments. Those drums are actually the star to me in a way because of the way that they emphasize the big beats. Bum, bum. And they emphasize the beats in such a way that it serves two purposes. One, I think musically, it adds to the variety and flavor, of course, and we have this full stringed, long bowed, but then, bum, bum. That to me is the Raiden Shogun's rules, and the rules that have been placed on the land, and, the fact that you can't leave Rito Village, Rito Harbor, whatever it is, when you first arrive, like, that to me, bum, bah. That sound is, well, you're not going anywhere. We have rules here. You can't even get into this place. And so that kind of is the ban hammer, as it were, the ban hammer on anybody entering or exiting Inazuma. While at the same time, we have natural beauty and elegance and grace, and life isn't terrible in Inazuma, certainly, and it's beautiful. There's trees with purple flowers, and there's fallen leaves adorn my nights. There's leaves that are everywhere, and the color hues are majestic. So there's absolute beauty and grace. But there is also violence. There is also loss of freedom, and there's loss of opportunity, and you are indebted to tax collectors and all that other stuff. So I'm only so far into Inazuma, so I don't necessarily know the details of what's happening in Inazuma. Don't tell me. However, that koto drum, those drums that we hear there, I think you are, like, to not be eloquent, the banhammer of the Raiden Shogun. Yeah, so right before this, we have the woodwinds, the bassoon and the clarinet, and I think the oboe in there as well. We're doing short rhythms. Bum 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 bum. A different energy than what we had before, obviously. And in this section, it almost feels like dreams and aspirations, sort of in the ether. Dreams and aspirations that are getting lost in the air. There is a certain quality about the people of Inazuma. There are hopes and dreams that are unable to. There are hopes and dreams that are unable to come to fruition because they're not allowed to leave the islands. So they can't go to the mainland. They can't go to Liyue. They can't go to Mondstadt. So in a way, even though the hopes and dreams are a very positive sound quality, and yet it feels like it's flowing in air, floating in water, and it doesn't necessarily end with opportunity. You know what I mean? Like that's a real subtle, like, impression I have of it, but musically in this section with the harp and with these instruments, that's what I'm picking up on. I mean, holy shit. This melody is gorgeous. And we started with the French horn, a French horn, a very warm, very natural instrument. There's a delicious sound quality. It's a very, well, obviously it's a brass instrument, but there's a very warm timbre to that. And of course we hear it in all sorts of different things, like, John Williams uses it a lot in Star Wars, and the Force theme, of course, is the predominant one that uses the French horn. And, anyway, common trope in symphonic literature and in music in general is highlighting a motive and highlighting it in different instruments. So we heard this at the very beginning of this song. We heard it with that flute, pan flute, whatever it is. Now we're coming back. We're recapping. We're recapitulating. We're restarting. Now we're adding the French horn. Then we have the trumpet. And then interestingly enough, behind the trumpet, we have those strings that are, and I think it's a harp, actually. I paused because I was all caught up in the beauty of it. But that's a variation on a theme. And we understand that this Inazuma theme, this is setting up the leitmotif of what we will hear throughout Inazuma. And I remember on stream, someone said that this theme comes up quite often. And so this is the leitmotif of Inazuma, just in the same way that the leitmotif of Liyue, we hear it at the Lantern Rite Festival. So this is a leitmotif, and we understand that a leitmotif, we see it a lot in Richard Wagner's operas and in Puccini's operas, and those two are the main guys in opera anyway. We see that these themes, these leitmotifs, remind us every time we think about a place, or we are in a place, or a place is mentioned, that theme will return. And so this is genius, because what this is doing is it's planting the earworm of you're always going to think Inazuma. And that's the point of a leitmotif. I played Fro in Das Rheingold. Fro, there's a rainbow bridge to Valhalla, and he sings it, and then it repeats again when Wotan sings it, and it repeats again anytime Valhalla is mentioned. Valhalla has its own theme. The Rainbow Bridge has its own theme. Different characters have their own themes. Rodolfo Mimi's Love in La Bohème has its theme. That's all leitmotif. And it's important for you to know you're being manipulated, because we create, as musicians, we create soundscapes so that you, composers and musicians, so that you then think, oh, that's that place. I know that place. Oh, that's that melody. And then that is how we create an emotional connection. The same melody sped up slightly and in a slightly different rhythm. Thunder. Swell and taper. Did you hear the thunder? Riding Shogun. She's everywhere. And that's very cool. And so we actually end, even though we have this full orchestrated swelling and that melody, it's again, plays throughout the entire piece. That melody in the end is a bit fearful, and there's a bit of that sort of antagonism there. There's antagonism, because even though Inazuma is a gorgeous, sprawling chain of islands, it's terrifying and dangerous, and skill level needs to be high, and artifacts need to be leveled up. And yeah, so when you I got distracted by that stupid. If you've seen my streams, people love talking about artifacts. The point is, there is tension in that, and we don't end on a positive note because when we arrive at Inazuma, we don't really know what's about to happen, and in fact, we're really restricted in our movements, and so that tension is inherent under the surface. And if you recall, when we talk about going to Inazuma, there's all this chatter about how dangerous it is, and you have to go through that storm of lightning or whatever. And so, technically we shouldn't even be there, but because we're on a mission, we find our way to get there. And that ends with tension. And it's really interesting that it's not just about beauty, it's actually about danger. In a lot of ways, Inazuma, the theme, is not only about the place, but it's also a prologue into the rest of what's to come in the realm of tranquil eternity. So really cool stuff. If you like this sort of stuff, like, subscribe. There's links in the About section if you want to support the channel. Never any pressure, of course. And there's a lot more Genshin Impact to come on the channel, as well as so many other games. So thanks a ton, and I will talk to you later. Bye.